So let me show you how to get a balanced master. First thing I'm going to do is show you an example of what I think is an unbalanced master, and then we're going to come back after that and fix it up.
It's when I get to talking, yeah, and get the feeling that it's nothing to do other than loving, yeah. And now you got us rushing to roll.
Now listening to that master, it definitely sounds like there's some things that we can get fixed up. First off, my vocals and my instruments don't really sound glued together. When it comes to getting things glued together, that normally has to deal with compression. I have a few different types of compressors on this track. First off, on my master track, I have a multi-band compressor, and then on my vocal bus I have two compressors. I'm doing the dual compression method, and that's pretty much all the compression that I'm using. What we're gonna do is see which one of these compressors gives us that glued together sound. So for my multi-band compressor on my master track, I have a few different bands, but the main bands I want to focus on right now will be the low mid and the high mid, mainly just because this is where the bulk of my vocal lies. Making sure we're properly compressing these two frequency ranges right here is what's going to give us that nice and glued together sound, if this is where the problem is coming from. So for my low mids, I have my attack set at 500 milliseconds. Let's try to bring this up, make it a little bit faster. Let's try to go for about 320.
It's when I get to talking, yeah, and get the feeling that it's nothing to do other than loving, yeah. And now you got us rushing to roll.
It sounds like my vocals are just overshadowing my instrumentals, which is not what I want. It's not doing it by a extremely large margin, but it's still pretty big to the point where we need to address it. So let's come over here to our compressors. So what I'm gonna do on these compressors is very simple. Since my vocals are overshadowing my instrumentals, I'm just gonna turn up the gain reduction on these two compressors. So as far as gain reduction goes, I should be getting about 10 decibels of gain reduction from both of these compressors combined, but we're about to do a little playback so we can get an accurate reading on how much gain reduction we're getting exactly. So after looking at this compressor, it's starting to make a little bit more sense of why things sound the way they do. If you were looking at these two gain reduction knobs, I was indeed getting 10 decibels of gain reduction, but I was only getting that high gain reduction on the loudest parts of my audio track. Majority of the time, the gain reduction on this compressor was barely moving, and the gain reduction on this compressor didn't really go past 5. So I was getting somewhere around 5 to 7 decibels of gain reduction majority of the time, which is why my vocals don't necessarily sound like they're compressed down enough. So let's add a little bit more gain reduction on both of these compressors, shall we? So I just made a few changes on both of my compressors. Now I should be more consistently getting about 10 decibels of gain reduction, and on the higher parts of my audio signal, I'm getting more like 14, 13 decibels of gain reduction. Let's give it another listen and look at the gain reduction.
And get the feeling that it's nothing to do other than and now you got us rushing to roll. You thought tears, you thought pain. Express those words to the things you say. You don't got no business talking that way. You fine, don't got no business looking that way.
Alright, so now let's turn back on our master and see if that fixed the problem.
It's when I get to talking, yeah, and get the feeling that it's nothing to do other than loving, yeah. And now you got us rushing to roll.
That that sounds close to where we need it to be, but there's still a little bit more room for improvement. What I'm gonna do is come back over here to this multi-band compressor right in the low mids and see if there's anything I can do to either the attack, release, or gain reduction. So let's get it. Alright everyone, so I just finished making the final adjustments and there was a few things that I needed to do, right? First thing I did was just like how I said, I came over here to the low mid frequency range area and I heard that I wasn't getting a proper amount of gain reduction. So what I did was come over here and I adjusted the threshold a little bit over here for my gain reduction. When using a multi-band compressor on your master track, you should be aiming for at least 1 decibel of gain reduction for each specific frequency range. Before, I was more consistently getting like 0.5 to 0.7. This is why it's really nice to see the exact amount of gain reduction you're getting, because consistently your gain reduction can look a lot different from what you're getting on the higher peaks of your audio signal. Just like how earlier before, my gain reduction on my compressors for my vocal bus was somewhere around 7 decibels of gain reduction, but I had it set for 10 decibels of gain reduction. Just like on my 2 compressors earlier for my vocal bus, I was more consistently getting like 5 to 6 decibels of gain reduction when I set the settings for 10 decibels of gain reduction, which is why it sounded like my vocals were so much louder than my instrumental. But anyways, after I finished off with my low mids, I came over here to my high mids and figured out there was some work I needed to do on it. First off, I was getting about 0.3 decibels of gain reduction, which is nowhere near enough. I adjusted it to the point where I was getting about 1 to 1.2 decibels of gain reduction for my higher peaks, and I was more consistently getting about 0.8 to 0.9 decibels of gain reduction, which is pretty much 1 decibel. I also came over here and I sped up my attack a little bit from 116 to 94 milliseconds. The reason why I like to have a bit of a higher attack for my high mid frequency range on multi-band compression is because whenever the hi-hats come in on my song, it makes my vocals sound like they're slapping the high mid. It makes the vocals sound a bit more snappier, pleasurable to listen to, and glued together. I really like it. After that, I came over here to my imager and I adjusted the stereo width for my high mid frequency range. I originally had it at like 10 and I turned it down to 7. And on my low mid, I had it at -16 and I brought it up to -13 because I felt like there wasn't enough bass in my song. Now, the very last thing that I did, because I feel like I wasn't getting enough bass, was I changed up my band on my equalizer. Now, before I had this up here to about 50 and the band was a lot wider. What I did was narrow out that band a little bit so I could get a little bit more bass seeping through, but at the same time, I'm still cutting off my low end. I'm just not cutting off as much of it. And that is pretty much all I did. Let's come back, listen to everything that I just did, and see how it sounds. Now, keep in mind, I don't have the CPU capacity to turn on all the plugins that I normally use on my track, because if I was to play back with all those plugins on, you would not be able to hear anything of what's going on. I only have the very bare essentials turned on right now, so you can actually hear how the vocals are getting glued in together with the instrumental. I really wish I could show you how everything sounds turned on, but my computer just cannot handle it. I'm so sorry.
It's when I get to talking, yeah, and get the feeling that it's nothing to do. Other than, it's when I get to talking, yeah, and get the feeling that it's nothing to do. Other than
Alright, now that sounds really nice. I really like the way that sounds. Everything sounds nice and balanced. So just as like a little recap, the main thing to getting a balanced master is searching each part of the entire track and seeing what needs to be adjusted and bringing everything together. As you saw earlier, I wasn't even in my master track and I was just adjusting the levels for my compressor on my vocal bus, which is more like mixing. But in order to get a balanced master, you have to come back, listen to every single detail of your mix and see what parts need to be tweaked around with or adjusted. But alright everyone, that is how I like to balance out my master. Now, if you're a beginner and you want to learn how to mix your vocals with stock VSTs inside FL Studio, hit the video down below so I can show you, give you a detailed step-by-step guide on how to do that, which will 5 times the speed of your progression. I hope you got a lot of value out of this video, everyone. If you did, make sure to hit like, also hit subscribe. I'll catch you all in the next one.